everyone, and welcome. My name is Dr. Jimmy Young, and I am a professor and social work futurist. This video is the first of a four-part series where I'm going to walk you through the 2025 report on technology in social work education from the CSWE Commission on Educational Policy and the Task Force on Technology in Social Work Education, what I often refer to as the CSWE Tech Report. This report makes the case that technology, and more specifically artificial intelligence or AI, has fundamentally changed the landscape of social work practice and education, and that the profession needs to respond now, not after the next accreditation cycle, but now. And here's what makes this report maybe a little bit different from other typical summary reports. First off, I've not really seen a summary video series like this one done before. It might exist, I just haven't seen it. So this might be the first time that a social work educator has actually done something like this. Second, I'm not just going to tell you what the report says, I'm actually going to use a set of strategic foresight tools and futures thinking to help us deconstruct the report. Hopefully this will help you to see not just what's in the report, but what it actually signals about where the profession of social work is heading and what it means for programs and practitioners. The foresight tools that we will use in the video series come from my training with the Social Work Futures Lab and the Institute for the Future, which is one of the leading foresight organizations in the world. And you don't actually need any background in foresight or futures thinking to follow along, as I plan to introduce each of the tools that we'll be going through. And in videos 2 and 3, I'll be spending some time teaching the tools themselves, not just applying them. So let's get into it. Let me bring up the slides. So the full title of this series is Technology in Social Work Education, Deconstructing the Report for Faculty, Program Directors, and Policy Educators. And right here at the bottom, you can see that the framing I just mentioned, we're going to be using a bit of strategic foresight and futures thinking, specifically borrowing from the Institute for the Future. A quick word about who this series might be for. I've really been thinking my target audience is social work educators, faculty, program directors, or field coordinators, but honestly, social work practitioners and students are absolutely welcome here. What we're going to be covering here is going to be relevant no matter what position you are in within the social work profession. Now, before I touch into the report itself, I want to spend a few minutes on this slide because it provides the lens we're going to use for this entire series. The Institute for the Future's foresight cycle follows this 4 steps: prepare, foresight, insight, and action. And I know using the foresight name in the actual framework is or could be a little confusing. It's a bit like calling a step in the research process research. But what IFTF means here by that second step is specifically scanning and scenario building work. This is identifying signals of change and imagining where those might lead. So keep that in mind as we go. But here's really how the cycle works and how it's going to map onto this series. The first phase is to prepare. This is really where you define your focal question, the scope of the issue, and for this series, the focal question comes directly from the report. What is the state of technology in social work education and what needs to change? The report itself is essentially in the prepare phase. CSWE convened a task force, they defined the problem and the scope of the issue, and that's really what we're going to be looking at through this series. The second phase is foresight, and this is where we'll spend most of our time. This is the scanning work. In video 2, I'm going to help us understand using a tool called a STEEP analysis to identify the signals that I see in this report or the key forces that are driving change across social, technological, economic, environmental, and political dimensions. In video 3, I'll be using a 2x2 scenario matrix to build 4 plausible futures for social work education based on what the signals might be telling us. The third phase is insight. This is really the aha moment. This is where we connect what we learn about the future back to the specific decisions and programs might need to make today. That's really video 4's territory. It's the strategic takeaways and what this report means concretely for curriculum, for field education, and accreditation. And then finally, in the fourth phase is action. And it's all about translating our insights into decisions. It's what you actually do differently starting now, today, in the present. And that's where I'll be closing out the series. But I want you to notice something important about the framework. Traditional policy analysis tends to look backwards. We analyze decisions that may have already happened. Foresight asks us to look forward. It says, given what we're seeing in the environment now, what futures are possible and how do we prepare for them? That's a fundamentally different kind of thinking, and it's exactly the kind of thinking that social work education needs right now. Because the profession is really at an inflection point, and the programs that recognize that early are going to be the ones that shape what comes next. Okay, let's go ahead and jump into the report. So what we're looking here is a couple of different questions. What is the report and why does it matter? Who produced it? What does it do and why does it matter right now? You can see here that CSWE, Commission on Educational Policy, convened a task force specifically around technology, and that task force brought together 12 leading social work researchers and educators. But this isn't really just a think piece or a position paper from one researcher. This is our accrediting body for social work education saying we need to figure out where we stand on technology, and we really need to do it now. In the middle part of this slide, it's asking what this report does. I believe the report assesses our current state of technology in social work education and then makes some recommendations for policy, specifically our 2029 Educational Policy and Accreditation Standards. The EPOS are all the standards that accredited social work programs have to meet. So when CSWE convenes a task force that makes recommendations for the next EPOS, that is not just an academic exercise. It's really the beginning of a policy process that can affect every accredited MSW and BSW program in the country. Lastly, on this slide on the right, we see the question of why this matters now. The 2029 EPOS revisions are in motion already. The drafting window's open, and programs that are engaging with the conversation now, that experiment with technology integration and build evidence about what works, are going to have a voice in those standards that are being written. Programs that wait might just simply have to comply with the decisions that are made by others. And that's not a small distinction. It's one of the reasons I think the report deserves more attention than maybe it's gotten. One more thing on this slide, you can see that the task force organized its work into 3 separate groups: digital knowledge and skills, methods of learning and practice, and AI and social work goals. The third group, AI specifically, is where some of the most important and frankly most urgent content in this report actually lives. And we'll get into that in just a minute. Here in this slide, the report's claim language is the heart of what the report is saying. And I want to read this quote directly because I think the language matters. Quote, "The deployment of AI is so distributed and so ubiquitous that opting out is not possible. Not preparing practitioners to understand and contribute to the development of technology can be considered unethical." Close quote. Let me say that again. Not preparing practitioners to understand technology, not preparing them, can be considered unethical. That is a significant statement coming from a professional accrediting body. They're not saying technology is great and everyone should use it, but they are saying the profession can no longer treat technology as something social workers can choose to engage with or not. The choice has been removed. AI is already in our agencies. It's in documentation systems. It's in the risk assessment tools, in the platforms that clients are using to access services. So the question is not whether social workers will encounter it. They already are. The question is whether they'll be prepared to understand it, to critique it, and to advocate around it. Now look at the 3 rows at the bottom of this slide. I've framed this as a shift in how the profession is thinking. There's some old framing that we can see even from the literature that technology is simply just a tool social workers could choose to use. It was optional, an elective, something for maybe just the tech-forward practitioners who happen to be interested in tech. More of the new framing is that technology competency is a professional ethics obligation. It's not a specialization, and it's not an interest area. It is a baseline expectation of what it means to be a prepared practitioner. So the implication follows directly that curriculum that treat technology as optional are no longer adequate. Not inadequate in a minor way, but inadequate in the same way that curriculum without content on ethics or diversity would also be inadequate. So those are the terms that the report is using. But I want to sit with this for just a moment because I think it is easy to read a line like this and just move on. If you're a program director or a faculty member, maybe a field coordinator, this report is essentially saying that what you are currently doing is probably not enough. Not because you haven't been trying, but because the environment changed faster than the profession has been able to respond. And that gap, the gap between the speed of change and the speed of institutional response, is exactly what Foresight is designed to help us navigate. So that's video one. We've established what the report is, who produced it, why the timing matters, and what the central claim is. And in video two, I'm going to go deeper into the report's findings using a tool called a STEEP analysis. And STEEP is a mnemonic. It stands for social, technological, economic, environmental, and political. STEEP is really a structured way of scanning the environment for signals of change, and it's going to help us organize what the report is telling us about the forces that are reshaping social work education. So if you found this useful, I hope that you'll share this series with a colleague, maybe who works in social work education and practice, because this conversation really does need more voices in it. And if you have questions or reactions, be sure to drop them in the comments. I'll read them, may even respond to some of them. So until the next video, I'll see you then.